Welcome to B2B Bites, the Big Commerce podcast where we explore the world of B2B manufacturing, distribution, and wholesale. Each episode, we invite leaders in the space to come and share their experiences of B2B e-commerce and how they are driving success in the ecosystem. Today, I'm very excited to welcome Simon Robillard, VP and partner of O2 Commerce. They're a leading SI implementation agency and recently joined forces with Zainray, another big commerce leading agency. We're going to be talking today about how design can play a key factor in driving B2B success, both in e-commerce and outside of e-commerce. Simon, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. Maybe first of all, introduce yourself, introduce O2 Commerce, and let's talk a little bit about how you got into the world of B2B.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Thank you, Lance. I'll use the same pronunciation you did.
That was my best French accent I could get.
It was great.
Okay.
I love it. So O2 Commerce and Zainray, we've been in the business for more than 20 years, and we focus on everything that is e-commerce related. And for us, e-commerce is defined very simply by three things, right? There's the user experience, which we're talking about today, but also there's customer data and there's product data. And when you put all three together, that's how you really create a compelling and thriving experience for mostly in B2B. And today, I want to talk a bit more like how the design and the data play together and how we can leverage those to help people kind of think about it a bit more than normal.
I think that's a really good place to start. In B2B, these are long-term customer relationships. There's a lot of data, whether that's living in a PIM, you've got product specification data, you've got lots of customer data, maybe 15 years worth of history. Bringing all of that together to build a great experience, I think, to me, is kind of the North Star of B2B e-commerce. I'm excited to dive into that. So maybe kind of start by explaining kind of how you, as an agency and obviously advisor to many B2B businesses, think about bringing these aspects of data and design together to really help drive growth.
Right. And to answer your first question, we got into the B2B part, right, at the same time because it tells part of the story, is because we historically were really good with large sets of data, like you just explained. So, I think everybody's faced like unlimited customer price lists and humongous catalogs, and it might not be sexy for some people, but for us that was really compelling for us, right? So that's how we got into it. And when we start thinking about how this data, what role it plays outside of just bringing insight, but like how does it influence the purchasing cycle of people, that's where we really start digging. And the way we explain it is it's very simple. It's like a flywheel. It's a very galvanized term, but your data influence your designs, and the way people interact with your design then influence your data again. And then you have a loop that you're able to do from there. And really, how we approach it is really to start by collecting and organizing the data you currently have, right? You talked about customer data, or maybe they have CRM data. Organize it, and then start influencing that to understand where are your customer using this data, looking at it. So make sure it's right. It's a big trust factor on the data part, right? Like that's how you know you're in the right place. And then when you start looking into the design and how they react with listening to sessions or to look like going to user testing, for example, then you start getting more data from it. And then you can take this data, then reiterate, and then start changing until you get to the desired effect that you want. So this flywheel is really kind of the essence of what the design and the data do, right? So one informs the other, and then it helps you grow whichever behavior you're looking to change with the people.
I like that. We think of it as an ever-growing flywheel. That more data that I'm pulling in, I start to refine the experience.
That's
I'm
right.
collecting data about that experience. What are my customers doing? I'm segmenting them into cohorts where I can deliver a specific experience, and that just continually improves. That can kind of continuous improvement process.
It's a discussion, right? It's like as if there's let's say a sales rep or someone talks with someone, they'll explain to them about their product, what they need, but it's the same thing that we need to do, but not with a person, right? So it is very complex kind of conversation we're having through data and design with the customers.
To your point, it is a complex process of collecting that data and then using it to adjust the experience. I think of processes for B2B e-commerce and improvements as kind of like a crawl, walk and run, you've got to bite off a bit of the apple that you can chew immediately, and then that breeds benefits that kind of get you into that walk phase, and then probably that run is full automation of those processes. You work with a lot of B2B manufacturers and distributors. How do they even start? If I'm a manufacturer distributor today, and I'm thinking, I need to improve my data, I want to improve these processes, where do you start?
Yeah.
How do you start that?
It's a good question. We get asked that quite a bit. I think the number one thing is to do a health check on the product data. So I think it's usually the easiest place to start because people know their catalog. A lot of time they don't see their catalog as an engine of growth or have been a lever of anything, but that's where it all starts, right? And let's say you're buying a complex, like a fitment for industrial kitchen. Well, there's a lot of points that you need to check on your to-do in your mind to know this is the right product or the right business to get there. So looking at make sure they have the correct information, that it's enriched enough, knowing that it's easy to look for. I've seen so many products would have like 19 spec sheets, but then we expect their client to go and look at all 19 and find their answers for it, right? So the product, kind of like the health check of it. Then we look at the orders. So is there any trends around the order? Are we seeing trends around the velocity of the ordering? Are we seeing trends around the AOV? And then this kind of also indicates a lot of information, right? So a lot of time, if the reorder cycle is becoming longer and longer and longer, then that means that they're probably more at risk of churning, even if the AOV goes up, but they're spending more, but they're going a bit further. So I think that would be another one that we look at on the data part. And then customer and how you segment it and how you talk to them precisely. Like the beauty of B2B and what really, truly, I think is exciting for us, it's like when we have these very complex businesses, they have like a rich buying process and different layers and approvals, and they all have their different personas, they all have their different requirements or what they can do or can't do. And then when you start looking at how we're talking to them through the data, to these personas, well, then we can then inform what can be surfaced on the UI per se, right? So the data informs the UI. You'll see me repeat that a lot, but it's really what we do, right? You inform the UI, and then you look the UI, what it brings you, and you bring it back to your data.
I think there's a few kind of really key points there to unpack. And I speak to some larger distributors who do actually see their product data as being a differentiator. And I don't think many businesses kind of realize that great product data is really important to enable your customers to have a great experience. If they are coming to you because you've got better information about their product, you're helping them find the right product. To your point, I don't have to look through 19 tech spec sheets. You've surfaced the information that's going to help answer that question. I think that's really important. I like the way you bifurcated it. Product information separate from customer information. So I got that product data that I need to improve the experience. And I want to look at my customer data to identify the customers that I have growth potential with or potentially are falling off. I noticed that time between orders is increasing, or maybe they're showing irregularities. We need to get the salespeople engaged to start to hopefully maybe save the sale here, right. save the business.
Or what we do a lot of times is we'll start looking at sessions, like the recorded session or user testing, to really understand, is it because they're looking to go to another distributor, for example? This is especially true in distributor, right? Like when their product that they can buy somewhere else than with you, then you need to be really sharp with it. So by looking at session, we can see, is it because they're not finding the right information, or are we able to make the link between them on the website and then calling customer support or calling the rep to find the information? And then when we get to that point and we're like, hey, this is flagged as a potential churn, then we get into the sales cycle or the account executive, whichever structure they have to go and kind of talk to them, understand what their pain point is. But there's a lot of data that can allow us to do some stuff around these clients before we get to that point.
I'm curious. Obviously, we spoke about, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. We spoke there about kind of time between reordering and maybe AOV going out. Are there other pieces of data that folks that are listening should look out for as they maybe think about building a model that's going to identify good customers, bad customers?
Yeah, that's a great question. The one I like a lot, and a lot of my team do, is the number of line per orders. So if that number of line per orders grows, a lot of times you have someone that is a growing customer. And it doesn't matter whether it's AOV or the number of orders, but if you're getting more and more items, mean that either they're expanding to other categories within your portfolios, either they are liking the service, they're liking the price they're getting, maybe their business is growing, so then you can support them. But I find that's usually a pretty good indicator of a good account. And then the opposite is also true, like a reducing amount of line per item, line per order makes it more worrisome a bit.
Yeah, I like that. You're increasing the number of use cases that you're supporting through that business.
We had exactly
share of wallet is likely increasing, and wallet might not be the right term, but it's share of use case. I don't think that's the right term.
Right, or just the bandwidth of product they're ordering from you. We had a client that majority of their business is based on 15 SKUs that they have. They have 1,500 SKUs, but like the large amount of them is 15 SKUs, and most of their clients are ordering these 15 SKUs regularly. But when they looked at the line per item, they're like, oh man, like they're getting to these new categories, and then there are new types of product that they have, and then that's when you get somebody that's more loyal, become more top of mind, and you're the go-to place to order whatever your product is. And that's kind of the key, because it's a as much as B2B is, we talk about, sometimes it's like complex and slower and stuff like that. Let me tell you, if your customer can buy your product somewhere else and they're not having a great experience buying it on your platform, or they're not finding the right information, they will look for somebody else. Like if they need 10 boxes of nails for their project, they will get those 10 boxes of nails. And I think that's a big thing that people need to understand. Like this is part of that journey that they needs to constantly go. I don't mean this as a threat, but I feel like this is something that's real. Like we're seeing it all the time.
Yeah, I can't remember who the study was, but I read one recently. It was something shocking, like 60% of B2B buyers will pay more for a better experience. It's literally worth more money. And why is that? Because in B2B, I'm buying for a company, on behalf of my company. Time is money. If purchasing on your site takes an extra 2, 3, 5, 10 minutes, that's time I could have been spent doing something else, driving revenue for my business. Well, if I've got to pay an extra percent for the product, but I got that time back, I might do that. Obviously, depending on the AOV of the product, there's a lot goes into that, but that happens. I remember it was a recent study I read, and I think that's a really great point. You'll pay more for that experience.
You do, and I think the opposite is also true. Like people will self-serve a lot more if the experience is great. Like I think everybody's heard about the long tail in B2B. Like not all accounts of every business is a very important and large account where you need to, go out and spend a lot of time with them, and that's fine. And some businesses don't want to be wine and dine and golf in these days. But as the generation is changing and as the size of the business is changing, self-serve is becoming like a real differentiator.
I just call it the fat tail, I think, often, because there might not be revenue as a fat tail, but in terms of number of customers, you might have 80% of your customer base sits in this long tail of mom and pop, small distributor, whatever it might be, shops that your sales team is spending way too much time servicing, and you need to automate that. You want a great experience to do that, but you want to automate that because it's chewing up way too much time. I hear that all the time. Maybe trying to bring some of this to life. Is there kind of a recent example of a manufacturer, distributor that you've worked with that you've really been kind of surprised, interested the way that you've been able to use data in that business, or the data that you found that has revealed something that's kind of interesting that our listeners will kind of learn from, maybe hearing about?
Yeah, the one that comes to mind is a manufacturer of sporting goods, right? Let's call them bicycles, for example. I'm not naming.
I think I know who you mean.
Yeah, I don't want to name any names because we'll just make sure the use case applies for everybody, right? So regardless of the brand, how big or small they are, I think it applies. Where they had a quick order, like a grid where you can order like different sizes and models and stuff like that of the same SKU. Very typical. And when you look at it, like 28% of, we did surveys, for their users, 28% of their users were like, yeah, we need that, we're going to do this, but a lot of the orders didn't come through that. And so basically, we watched some sessions, as I said before, recorded, did some user testing, and what we saw is that a lot of time they would go and start filling out the grid with the different models, but then would just stop, drop the session, and then they would pick up the phone. And I think that was it's a big aha moment for everyone there, because it's great, we want them to call, but they need to manually process this order after over the phone. So what we did is that we did two things. We started doing the distribution center that they had, now shown within the grid, every available quantity of each one, right? So if it's the West Coast distribution center, you will get it later because they are aware of that at each order. And the same thing with their pricing. So they have a specific price list. Unfortunately, this client doesn't have very nicely built tiers, but they have negotiated price lists, which are always fun to deal with, but they work, right? They buy more. So now that client could see what's his price on this model, this size, and when he could get it. And we've seen over the first month after we implemented that, two little pieces of data. Again, data, we surface it to the UI, and we got the data back. That 72% more orders came from that quick order. And that's just one piece, right? And out of those, I think something like 30% had more lines than usually. Again, this is only after 1 month, the sessions that we did, but still, like that's, again, to me, that's the best example of the flywheel. You take the data, you put in the UI and get the data back to it, and now we're going to be able to iterate around that to do a little bit more data and design surfacing.
That's such a great example. I often think B2B businesses think, build it, they will come. No, not necessarily. If it doesn't fit the use case as they need it, no, they'll build it, you'll build it, they might not come and use it. And if it doesn't exactly serve the purpose, then you're going to have to rethink it. I'm curious, just more of a quick technical kind of follow-up there. You mentioned kind of monitoring the sessions. How did you go about doing that? What does that mean? What does that look like?
Right. So there's two ways we usually do that. Well, there's three ways you can do it. First is that there's plenty of technologies that you can do that will anonymously record somebody, the user kind of go and click, and I'm sure everybody's seen those before. So those are a really good kind of raw data. Then after that, what we like to do is take some of those sessions where we go with actual real user testing. So we'll get either existing clients or proxy clients that we can find to go them through either in the UX mockup phase or in the project phase. So then we can see what they're doing, how they're doing. One way, very easy way to do it, if people don't want to do a big process, is you do little bounties. So you pick some of your customers and like, hey, can you find, let's give an example, the spec sheet for the fastener for this HVAC compressor. And then the person like, yeah, sure. And then they go and then you record them like they do it live. And you get a ton of data because you see how they click, where they go, how they do it. And everybody wants to get a little challenge done, right? And you get a little bounty. But that's one way of doing it. We can do that at scale also. And the third is through analytics. Like when we look at the conversion funnel where people drop, we can route the traffic to be able to make some assumptions around that. These are ways that we look at those sessions usually.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, kind of different ways of approaching that. You can take we're going to collect data at scale, but actually sometimes just sit down with your customers, ask them the questions. If you've got a salesperson, ask the salesperson, when you go there, can you ask them to get on the site, see what they do, for how do you place an order? You'll learn so much from that, and do it with your friendly customers. As you said, give a bounty.
But I mean, just even new features or new project. When we do B2B project, all of our projects come with a change management and onboarding plan because of exactly that. You start with your 2-3 really good customer that you're very close with, and then you start seeing all maybe the outliers or any of the pieces that you didn't see coming because you tested both on each side, but then customer comes in and does something completely different. Yeah. So that's it's part of the process, but it brings you so much. Like I was reading an article about the guys that did Airbnb, and after a short amount of time, the first thing they did is like, we decided to go see our customer and be there and ask them questions and see how they did it, and they unearthed a whole bunch of different insights. And it's the same thing in commerce.
I think I actually read Brian, the CEO, spent a year just living in Airbnbs.
Yeah,
to understand.
I could believe that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I read that. We started by talking about how data can influence design. Maybe just kind of talk about that a little bit. What sort of data points do you generally think are the right data points to collect that drive changes in design? How does that flow kind of work? Those that are sort of new to that way of thinking, where are the areas that actually you're more likely to see kind of collection of that data and then it influence design across the site? What does that look like?
I think one that probably comes to most people in their mind is the navigation bar, the categorization, the search, and that's an area where minimal change make a big impact. And I think that when we look at zero result searches or categories that are misplaced product or like no add to cart on specific categories, those kind of things are indicator that there's a problem that is most likely around design, because the design or the quality of the data is the two pieces I would say. But I would say I would look at those metrics. Because ultimately the information and data in this point is about building trust to that client, right? And then not just trust like, hey, we're a great company, but trust that I will find my right product. That's one thing. Like the intent needs to be validated, because it's a good thing to find your product, but if you get there, it's like, I want to find this, but I don't think I can find it. Regardless of the product information, you're not going to get there. So any metrics that you can find around the intent of people where you want to go, which goes around category or navigation, landing pages of that product. And then after that, what are you finding and when are you clicking on the product information? So anything that's trust-based on the product, when you go past the searching but into the product, like I was talking about spec sheets before, like how many of those are being clicked on, downloaded on the product. It seems very, like small as a piece, but if you have this big, let's go HVAC, like I said, you have this big compressor that's worth like, I don't know, 10 grand, and you have 5 spec sheets, but no one ever clicks on it and gets to it. Well, there's a problem. Like, why are they not doing it? They just know that's what they need? I doubt that. So I think those are the areas where I would start: the navigation, the search, and then everything that is around the customer account. So I think that's where a lot of time when we start looking at session or analytics, data points or data hypothesis will come from that area. Like there's so much growth we've got with some of our clients by just having the right data at the right time. One piece that I don't see a lot, but when I see it, it's amazing. You are X number of dollar from the next tiering. You show that to a customer, and he will know that if he gets $10,000 more in that order, he gets to 20% off his order instead of that part. Seems very simple, but it's such a huge effect. And then once we start seeing these, then we can start surfacing other data. People in your region bought this, or you should also stock this new product. And these are all within a customer account where there's a lot of data and design area to do it.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. We think about B2B and B2C being very, very different. At the end of the day, you're selling to a person. They have human emotions, and the way that you invoke those emotions is actually important.
Emotion is exactly that. And to me, the strongest emotion is trust. Am I at the right place? Am I finding the right thing? And is this the right way for me to go? And then when you have all these incentives, you don't think, oh, am I trusting them? I'm near my second tier. But it makes you feel good, and it's the same way, right? I think the B2B experience versus B2C, you'll have a lot more data, a lot more efficient, a lot less like inspirational. Well, yeah. Some of them are inspirational, but it's more about being effective, but having the right information at the right place in your journey where you are. I think that's the key, so that you get those emotions at the right time.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. People don't think about that when it comes to B2B. They're really stuck on, oh, this is purely operational, it's purely but actually I'm a human, I'm logging in, I might be making a purchase of HVAC widgets, but actually if you're invoking an emotion that's trying to get me to that next tier, maybe I'm going to give you more share of my wallet, I'm going to look at the rest of your catalog, so I'm going to make a bigger purchase. Maybe just honing in on one example, you mentioned something that was quite interesting there, right? Which is I've got 5 tech spec sheets, no one ever gets into them. If that's the case, how do I solve that from a kind of design perspective and interaction perspective? How should I think about it? People aren't engaging with my content the way I want.
Right. So that's a good point. So one way that we see that's usually the easiest is to make sure that this content is able to be ingested in anything that's search-based. So if you're searching into, we all seen complex like words or like jargon that people
natural
are using.
Language processing.
Yeah. But once you start injecting your content inside of your search, and you have a search engine that allows you to do that, then you're able to say, I don't know, like a fastener, and then you can start surfacing some information around the fastener, and it could be your spec sheet, it could be your guides, it could be anything of the sort. But then you're surfacing and making people get into that piece of information much quicker. So that's one I would say as an easy one. The second one would be also to add them into your marketing flows or your CRM flows of, let's say we talked about segmentation before. So someone is targeted as a janitorial supply purchaser, and you want them to know about your new cleaning machine spec sheets, and they've purchased with you before. There's a way you can just start feeding and seeding this information to these people into your spec sheets, which gives them closer to that piece. And then you can see, are they ready to buy, not ready to buy when it's a bigger item to purchase.
I like that. That's an interesting aspect too, which is you can think of this as top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, and actually based on how they're interacting with that content, you can understand where they are in that purchasing journey. So if you've got everything joined up, serve them different marketing materials, get the sales team to interact with them in a different way, and that could be very impactful on your conversion and making sure that once they make that decision, they're coming back to you and not going to one of your competitors.
But imagine if you're a salesperson selling, a big $20,000 cleaning machine, and someone says, hey, X client just downloaded a spec sheet of the machine 123. If that was me, I'd be like picking up the phone right away. Like if they're looking at spec sheet, they're in the process. Nobody's looking at spec sheet if you don't have to.
So this has been a really great conversation. I like how we've we've weaved a little bit all over the place, but I think there's some really great nuggets for folks to kind of take away. But as you look to the future, kind of over the next couple of years, what are the things that are kind of exciting you in this space? New tools that are coming out, new approaches. What are things that as you look over the next couple of years that are where you're kind of focusing, looking that's the next kind of step that folks are going to take?
Right. Is that where I should say AI? Is that?
Yeah. We got, 25 minutes through. You haven't mentioned it once, so now the bingo card is up.
I tried, yeah. No, I think that regardless of AI or data-driven pieces, I think where I'm excited about, where I see a lot of gain is around being predictive. And I think businesses are now collecting a lot of and organizing their data quite a bit. And I think some are at the start of that journey, some are in that journey. But as more people come, are growing that data practice internally, they'll be able to come up with some new way to predict inventory, predict behavior, predict pricing change, reorders coming. And that's going to bring a whole new set of efficiency in the supply chain or efficiency in their sales process. And this could go even as far as predicting how a user will interact with a site, right? To make the link with the UX and UI. And I think that we're going to see active personalization being kind of the future trend that comes next couple of years. Maybe not next year, but let's say in a couple of next years, I can see that happening. And I think that's going to be the next kind of layer of people seeing a lot more ease of use, right? Building that seamless experience that are people looking to do. I heard somebody say a phrase a while back. I forget who. I want to steal it, but the first 20 years of e-commerce, was plugging the wire, making sure it worked. And I think we solved that as an industry. And I think that the next probably 10, because it's faster now, it's about creating that experience and creating what we're trying to build out of that, like that handshake that the seller does with a buyer. Like, how do we create that experience online using all the piping we built, right? And I think that's being predictive around a lot of experience is gonna help a lot, I think.
That's spot on. And just the sheer amount of data that comes in, your now ability to analyze that data and get insights from it is going to be better than ever, I think, with AI powering it. Simon, thank you so much for joining us today. This was a fantastic conversation. I think our audience will have really enjoyed it and hopefully taken away some key nuggets that they can go and use to approach and change the way they approach their data and their customer experience. So thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.